What's going on, everybody? Rage here, and I am here today to bring you an unbiased review of Battlefield 2042. I played the beta, was not as bad as people said. The servers were understandably terrible, and the guns, they were mediocre at best. Recoil control was a bit of an issue, but when you got down to it and got the right attachments, it was still fun and everything was usable. However, my main problem is this is now released. As you can clearly see, we have the full game. No more beta testing or anything. Well, besides some minor fixes from the beta, and as you can see down there by the breakthrough logo, Dozer's ballistic shield was removed for patch rework or whatever they were trying to fix with it. But as of right now, all of the character stuff seems good. The specialists, I understand why people are angry with them. The specific gadgets are a bit of a disappointment because it takes up a free slot and limits what you can do. Although it's not entirely too bad because it keeps people from spamming things that would be really annoying, such as Sundance's grenade belt. Imagine like 3 or 4 cluster grenades getting chucked into a room. It's good that you can't have people using multiple of these in any given spot. It doesn't, however, that does mean they could still have a team of all the same specialists, so you could get spammed regardless, but it just means that you couldn't have people pairing it and spamming it, so think like Dozer, in his case, with other Battlefield games you could equip a riot shield, and then use some kind of other crowd control gadget. It effectively made holding buildings incredibly annoying, so it's somewhat understandable that they would move everything to one specific character, because it kept things from being incredibly annoying, which I do appreciate when defending. However, my main problem with this at the moment is the fact that when you unlock attachments in this game, you have to scroll into the menu to equip them. And if you go into this menu mid-match, your attachments will not be in your quick slot. You can't go to your quick slot and swap them. They don't appear regardless of how many times you click it. The only time it sets is after the match finishes, so if you set it in a quick slot and you don't do anything else in the menu, you can't use it during the match, but when you go to the menu, it'll be in that quick slot if you go over here. Currently, I was using the M5A3, and in all honesty, I'm rather disappointed with it, because in order to equip my Fusion Hollow, this would have been very helpful in the match I was in, however I couldn't equip it until I got back in the menu. In my opinion, this creates a lot of problems as the recoil control on some of these guns is just absolutely horrible. And you can't even get better attachments to help with your recoil control issues, because in order to unlock them, they're locked behind kills. Those kill totals are pretty hard to get, considering the fact that you cannot get very accurate shots with having incredibly bad recoil. It honestly seems to me like it defeats the purpose of even having the quick slot attachment swaps whenever you can't even get attachments to begin with. Your starting attachment for most guns is one optic sight that's typically going to be something like an ACOG, which in all honesty is completely useless on... Like, take the SMG, for example. Your starter SMG, being the PBX, an ACOG on this thing is completely pointless, as it's even specified to be a short-range weapon. Now, if this is based off of the real-life gun, well, it is, apparently, up by where it says offers powerful 45 ACP. For those of you that know about guns, 45 ACP wouldn't be very effective at far ranges, so having a 3x sight on this gun seems incredibly pointless. Until, well, in the attachments menu, suppose there's some decent ammunition types since they added some from the beta. High power might do a little bit better over range, but that still would be rather pointless. Because, I mean, even subsonic doesn't have a range boost, it actually goes down. This is one of the few weapons I would say you could probably use without a grip and not have recoil that makes it flick like a 50 cal. However, another note, LMGs, it is honestly ridiculous that this has less recoil than an M5. The fact that you can shoot an LMG in full auto, standing up, and have it have almost no recoil, compared to the M5 is what is really getting under my skin. You are taking a light machine gun and you slap it with less recoil than your average combat rifle. It makes no sense. And again, this kind of really does highlight where the attachment issue comes in as well. Because this thing with no attachments is incredibly easy to control, while the M5, if you fire a full burst, it is a pain to hold your aim on center. It honestly defeats the point. I mean, I also find it hilarious that the M5 says controllable. It has more recoil than most of the other guns in this game. I have literally, the AK-24 in the beta had less recoil than the M5. Also, the marksman rifles, both of these were easier to control in the beta. I know the main game has only been out for roughly 2 days now, but still, in my opinion, it just makes things difficult. If I move on to anything about guns while I'm still going on a tangent here with the review, it's the fact that these aren't necessarily bad. The M44 in the beta was pretty good with damage dealing. Didn't get to try the MP28. But the G57 is... It's rather interesting that this is more reliable than most of your main weapons, because if this is still the same as it is in the beta, me personally, I don't use sidearms that much in Battlefield. But if this is the same way as it was in the beta, this would be much better than most of your standard equipment, solely because of the fact that you can get, oh, I don't know, a good... Let's see, what's its fire rate? So it's got 450, which, if you have a fast trigger finger, you can buff that slightly. You'll go up to maybe a good 455, 460. But you can get multiple shots off with very minimal recoil, which makes this more reliable than some of your other guns when it comes to CQB. Secondly, gadgets. Gadgets in this game have been annoying me more than anything else, solely because of the fact that you can only equip one, and some of these are completely useless. I mean, the fact that you have incredibly limited places to restock certain gadgets, like the repair tool, for example, I wish it stayed the same as they did with Battlefield 5, where it was just run up to something and you could repair it without having to take up a gadget slot. Some of this other stuff, yeah, it taking up a gadget slot's okay, because the insertion beacon and the C4, nothing new. SOFLAM's been the same for a couple of games, anti-tank. The med pen is a new addition. That's honestly not that bad of a gadget. It would be pretty useful during certain situations, but most of the time you're not going to have time to even pop one off before you get sprayed. AA missile. Haven't used this one yet in the main game, but in the beta, I did not like it at all. It was pretty inaccurate, and it had a lot of trouble actually hitting a target. It wasn't necessarily that it was inaccurate. It was more of the fact that it couldn't hit targets because its speed was bad, or it would get caught on things because it couldn't move around certain objects. Honestly, that's about it for gadgets. There's not too terribly much to complain about there. Throwables, only thing I don't like about this is the fact that these have such a high level requirement. You unlock more... By the time you unlock the second tier grenade, which would be a smoke grenade at level 12, you've unlocked about... Oh, I don't know. You've unlocked relatively 3 or 4 things that you would probably use over that anyway, because you don't really have much use for a smoke grenade in some of these maps at the moment, because they're either incredibly open with very little cover to actually run to if you used a smoke grenade, or they're so close quarters using a smoke grenade would actually hinder you more than anything else. Vehicles. Vehicles were... These are interesting. The call-in system is going to be a bit of a pain for some of you whenever you first pick this game up, because most of these vehicles you can only have one of at a time, and that one of at a time can be taken by members of your team. Not members of your squad, but like the entire collective 32-man team could take one of your uses for, let's say, an LTV, or the M1A5. That's gone pretty quick, because most people grab it off spawn and then hold on to it the whole game. Not too many complaints. I like the fact that transport choppers actually work the way you would expect them to in this game. Although they are weaponized heavily, so It is pretty good if if you get a good squad in one of these transports, you can get a pretty solid push in. And those weapons do help a lot with clearing out camping squads that are sitting on top of buildings, for example, on Orbital. Um, some of this I truly would believe would be chaotic in the case of the M5C or the MAV. Having those as personal vehicles could cause complete chaos in higher level games, so probably a good thing nobody's that high of a level at the moment. Um, RAO's Cyberware Suite, it's alright. Uh, the recon drone for Casper is honestly pretty useful. The fact that it has a bit of difficulty being used at some points is a bit disappointing, but it's honestly not all that bad. The SG-36 Century for Boris did get buffed pretty decently since the beta. It's actually now usable, so some of you will appreciate that. If you like having, automated turrets or something to help with defense. Irish's kit is incredibly useful